Hello, everyone, and welcome into another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we talk all things Colorado Rockies. Yes, I'm holding a mini microphone. No, you can't keep staring. Let's get into it. And first, let's talk about Brenton Doyle, someone that we've talked about on this show before, someone that has been brought up in trade rumors before. The end of last season, or right before the trade deadline, I should say, teams were showing interest. And yet again, here we are in the middle of the offseason with multiple teams showing interest in the star outfielder. The Mets, Padres, Phillies, and Yankees all showing interest in Doyle. Now, if you look at these teams and some of the prospects that they have, Padres really don't have much. A couple of these other teams only have a few in the top 50, with the Yankees having one in the top 25. The Yankees having that player being a shortstop and a second baseman in George Lombard Jr., the Mets being the only one with a right-handed pitcher in the top 50, Jonah Tong. So for Doyle, it will be interesting whether or not you go after multiple prospects, maybe you go after some of these top prospects, or get guys who are already MLB ready. That will be kind of the deciding factor for Doyle. One interesting name that isn't being brought up and isn't a team currently showing interest is Brendan Donovan of St. Louis. And the reason why I talk about him is because St. Louis is looking to start shopping him. You can also connect it to Willie Castro, who the Rockies have shown interest in the past, who's also a utility infielder. And that's who Brendan Donovan is, but just enhanced. He's a better player. He obviously has been playing pretty well in St. Louis with a slugging over 400. His OPS was around 780 last season. So he'd obviously be pretty effective, I think, with the Rockies. And the Rockies just adding another quality hitter to the lineup might be nice, as well as some infield depth. That's probably the weakest thing that they have right now is outside Tovar. There really isn't much in that Rockies infield. But do I think St. Louis would do something like that? They would obviously need more than just Brenton Doyle. However, it is something to consider because what we'll note in the second segment and really just beyond is this new front office wants to try to make moves that can help grow and enhance this team, right? They want to do things that they just haven't done in the past. So, you bring up someone like Brendan Donovan, and it might be easy to scoff at, but in reality, I want to rule anything off the table for the Rockies in terms of making different moves, going after players that maybe they haven't gone after in the past. And I think that's important as you continue to build and see what makes sense for this Rockies lineup. And we talk about making moves that they haven't done before. The Marlins are actively shopping Edward Cabrera. He's on a team-friendly deal. He could probably be the best pitcher in the rotation with the Rockies. Had 150 strikeouts, a sub-4 ERA. Could be an addition worth looking at for Colorado. So we just talked about Doyle, and this could be a type of trade that makes sense for the Rockies because you'd be going after really a quality pitcher who would be under contract for the next 3 seasons. And it is very much worth considering if you're Colorado. Now, on the other end, Marlins might look at that and scoff and say, don't ever call us again. I'm hanging up the phone and I'm calling the police. However, I do think it's worth noting that this is what the Rockies front office wants to do is they want to try to find guys who can pitch at Coors Field. And I'm not saying Cabrera will be that guy, but you have to start taking chances. You can't just keep sticking with the status quo of building up from the farm system, letting them pitch at Coors Field for 3 seasons, ultimately struggling, trading that player away, and then watching them thrive elsewhere. That just can't happen anymore. You have to actually be aggressive. And maybe now's not the time to do that, but it is worth starting to think about it. And so with someone like Edward Cabrera, it's worth at least making a phone call. It can't hurt for Colorado, and it can't hurt to just inquire with other teams with pitchers that are available. That's going to be the biggest thing is just figuring out what this front office wants to do. It's what we've heard a couple of times already is that they're building just communication between teams. So even just inquiring about someone like Cabrera could be a difference maker down the road. Maybe not this year, but in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, now you're actually able to start making deals that are beneficial for your team. You're not just trading away guys, right? You're actually acquiring key pieces that aren't just trade deadline pickups like bullpen relievers. You're making deals in the offseason with pitchers that can make an impact for seasons to come. So I think inquiring about Cabrera isn't the craziest thing in the world. I think it's worth noting. Doyle would probably be at the center of that with probably some other pieces. And maybe it's just a 1-for-1, but it's hard to believe that, but who knows? And that's why you make those phone calls. So because of that, I do think it's worth the Rockies to at least look at Cabrera, to look at a potential starting pitcher, which the Rockies just desperately need. But obviously the Rockies, they don't have much starting pitching. They were the worst team in baseball last year, but they did not get a top 5 pick. They did not get a top 8 pick. In fact, they got the number 10 pick. That's due to the MLB's new anti-taking rules that got put in place in 2022, 2023. And I get it. MLB, they don't want tanking. They don't want these teams to build up on a bunch of young prospects, but it feels like baseball has so many more issues. Houston took advantage of this. The Cubs took advantage of this. But really, since then, we haven't seen these teams just absolutely stockpile, or other teams that were trying to do it have the same success, right? Houston's obviously kind of the golden child for tanking and getting all these assets and then building just a bit of a super team. But really, I think the bigger issue is there's no salary floor and there's no salary cap. So the Rockies, they can't get a top 5 prospect this year, but the Dodgers can spend millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to acquire different assets. And that's not to say that the Rockies can't be aggressive too, but the money's just different. The deals that the Dodgers have are not going to be the same deals that the Rockies have with, TV deals and everything like that. That's not to say there aren't cheap owners, which is why there also needs to be a salary floor, right? What was it? The A's a couple years ago. I mean, their salary cap was just a disaster in terms of they weren't paying anyone anything. That can't happen either, but there needs to be both. There can't be no cap and no floor, because that's where we're running into this competitive disadvantage where the Dodgers aren't afraid to spend. They're not afraid to go in the tax because they have that money. Certain teams just don't have that money. But all that to say, that's a different tangent for a different day. There's so many issues with MLB. And, for the Rockies, because they had 2 seasons in a row where they in the lottery, they were not allowed to have a third. Those darn Rockies are trying to take all those assets. Isn't that right? Needless to say, the Rockies can still find someone at that 10th pick, but it's just a little bit harder. I mean, having a chance at the number 1 pick, which they didn't even have in the last 2 seasons. They did not have a top pick, but finding someone at 10 is just a lot harder than finding someone at 1 through 5. And that's just a given. And you just have to trust that this front office will know what they're doing come draft time. I do think they will. Josh Burns has actually done a great job of drafting in the past, but still, it's hard not to be slightly frustrated at something like this, because the Rockies just had their worst year in franchise history, one of the worst seasons in MLB history, and they're rewarded with the 10th pick. I don't think if the Rockies got, a top 5 asset, that all of a sudden they'd be this Death Star of a team. So instead, let's just let the Dodgers keep spending as much money as possible. That's totally cool. We don't care that Shohei isn't going to get paid until like 20 years after his contract. That's fine. Those Colorado Rockies, nope. We do not need those Rockies to have another top 5 asset. That would be too scary. Can't have that. Anyways, tangent done. Rant over. Let's talk about free agency. We go from that tangent straight into, hey, Rockies, let's spend some money. And look, I've stated it a couple of times in the show before. I think that the Rockies most likely will go after a first baseman. They might go after some starting pitching too. We haven't seen really any starting pitching signed currently in these winter meetings or during free agency. So that is a possibility. I think someone like Josh Bell is most likely type of player that the Rockies would go after. But who knows, right? I think just with Charlie Condon coming up here, either next season or the season after, first baseman depth is important. How important, though, it's hard to tell what the Rockies will value. But that's what I'm thinking for Colorado. Luis Ariz is also available, and he would actually be pretty interesting. And I think his bat would be fun at Coors Field. But those are the type of players that the Rockies will look after here in free agency. I would love to see them get aggressive with maybe some starting pitching. Obviously, they're not there yet in terms of competition, but finding a starting pitcher that you can hold on to for seasons to come is extremely important. You have to start building somewhere. I think that can start now. But it's also why we mentioned Edward Cabrera earlier on in the show. But free agency is still in full swing. I'm really excited to see if the Rockies can just add a couple of pieces so we can get this thing off the ground. But until then, it's all just trade and free agent rumors right now. And so you're seeing a lot of speculation, and I'm sure with more days and months to come, the Rockies will most likely make a move, if not now, before the trade deadline, which is obviously months to come. But I do think you have to give this front office some time, and some time not just being a few months. I'm talking a couple of years. But I am really confident in their ability to start making some things happen for the Colorado Rockies. But until then, we will just have to wait and see. Again, my name is Scott Ayers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow.